Hi, everyone. I have graded your discussion boards and your reflective exercises and put the grades in the gradebook for your review. In general, things went really well. I personally enjoy reading the discussion boards that you had assigned this week. It tells me a lot about who you are. It's one of those assignments, again, I wish it was at the beginning of the course so that I could get to know you a little bit better, get to know your story. Truly appreciate the efforts that you went through and really talking about your calling into nursing. Many of you had very poignant stories, either through your own medical journey, your own medical history, that you became interested in nursing and followed it as a career path. A few of you had it modeled by beloved grandparents or a parent or a family member that demonstrated the value of nursing as a profession, and you saw that as a calling through them. A few of you found it as a second career, where it was not the first calling, but your heart always kind of felt pulled toward nursing. So you sought it out as a second career and found a home in nursing. I think it's especially important that however you found yourself in nursing, that you feel that your career has purpose and meaning for you as a profession, but also for an individual. And for those of us that are Christian nurse leaders, it's even more important that we feel that we are called to our profession. We know that God gives different talents to all of his children, and that our talents are demonstrated in different ways. So often we think that the only way that we can minister to God's people is in the church or in his active mission field, in a church mission. But if we really look at our role as Christian nurse leaders, we need to be constantly aware that our mission field is wherever we're planted. If you think about the 12 disciples, think about being a fisherman sitting in a boat and Jesus calling to you from the shore, and you're chosen as a fisherman to be a disciple. His disciples went out after his death and resurrection and went out into many, many places and plied their professional trade, but also ministered to his people. So I think it's great that many of you really did see that this was a calling. I wish I could say that I knew from early on that I was supposed to be a nurse. The truth is, I found myself as an 18-year-old single mother with a beautiful 4-month-old baby with no career aspirations, but suddenly found myself in desperate need of a career that resolved the fear and anxiety of providing for a newborn. So when I went to a community college, I walked into the guidance office and said, I need a job, I need an education that leads me to a job, so that I don't ever have to feel this afraid anymore. I don't have to worry that I won't be able to keep a roof over my own head or the roof of my child. When I went home to tell my mom that I was going to go to nursing school, she promptly reminded me that I had never gotten through a single medical procedure as a child without passing out, throwing up, or becoming acutely ill in the middle of the procedure. I was well known in our doctor's office for having my blood drawn, walking out into the lobby and passing out across their lobby chairs. But I was determined. I don't know that it was a calling as much as it was God's footprint for me to follow, so that I had stability, so that I was really forced to trust in him, and to do something super brave that I completely did not have a skill set for, had absolutely no heart for. I just had this sense that it was what I was supposed to do. 23 years later, I've learned that I do not belong in an OR. I do not belong in the middle of a bedside procedure. I am a rock star mental health nurse. I'm all about the behavior. I can do trauma, which is, I learned that, many years ago, but you do not want me in your OR. So it is a calling, and sometimes God speaks directly into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, and sometimes he sends angels. Sometimes his messengers come in different forms. So I'm so pleased that you took the time to really think about your own journey and to really reflect on what that career has done for you as a calling, as a mission field, and also as a professional. When I looked at your reflective exercises, the real idea behind this was to have you really look at what are nurses really accountable for, that we really can influence from a quality standpoint. And a few of you picked one of my favorite indicators, and it's often overlooked, and that's the environment. How does the environment that nurses practice in every day bolster patient outcomes? And there is a huge amount of data out there that tells us when our professional environment is engaging, it's healthy, it's productive, it's collegial, that we are at our best. And when we're at our best, we're satisfied, we're engaged in our profession, and we provide top-notch care. So appreciate those of you that touched on what that nursing environment looked like. Someone also touched on what it looked like to have nursing retention and recruitment be adequate as a nursing indicator. And we really do have a tremendous influence on how we recruit and retain our vulnerable nurses. Think about all of those new nurses that within the first year of their practice, we know that 40 to 50% of them will leave their practice not because of pay, not because of the shift, but because of the environment. They don't like the culture. What does that say when we destabilize our nursing unit by not having adequate staffing, by not having highly qualified staffing because the turnover is so much? So again, that's another example of a really good nursing indicator that's really supported by research. When I look at an APA or a writing style standpoint, there are two areas that I want to prompt your memory and help remind you to do. First, remember that in graduate level writing, you should not be quoting authors. You should be synthesizing what you've read by those authors. And sometimes authors write these great things that sound so scholarly that we really hesitate to put it in our own words. But it really is an expectation of graduate writing to be able to read something that's written at a really good level and be able to interpret that and tell us, your reader, what that means to you. What does it mean for your practice? What do you think it means? There are times that you just cannot synthesize it, there's just no way to say it better. Those are one-offs. Those are rare events. So make it your goal to read things, and sometimes just on a blank sheet of paper, jot down what you think it says and then type it into your paper and properly cite it. The other thing I want to remind you is that at a level of graduate writing, as you write down key ideas, it is vital that you support it with scholarly literature. I know, as experts in your field, as highly experienced nurses, and some of you are nurse leader positions, that when we're talking about nursing quality, you're talking about it from a baseline knowledge. You know what you know. And so when you're writing, you're very fluid with the content. What's important to know is that while I know, your reader, if it's in a general sense, needs to know where you know it from. All key ideas need to be supported with scholarly sources. That is a graduate writing expectation. That's not going to go away as you finish your degree. And if you pursue a doctoral degree, you're going to need to bolster and support your key ideas. That does not mean that every idea you have has to be supported, but the majority of your key ideas, anything that you think would be a bullet point, you need to gather a source and put it in there. In this assignment where you had 5 key indicators, it was quite possible that you could find a really good source that gave 5 good indicators, and you would be using the same source. So know that that's an expectation of graduate writing. The last thing I want to talk about is the work for next week. You have your final paper on Christian nursing leadership. My encouragement is you're going to be asked to do some reflections, and some of it in this paper are going to feel like you can pull back from your other submitted work. Do not copy and paste from a prior submitted paper and place it into this paper. It's okay to use the same references if you thought they were great references, but reword or summarize. One of the examples is your leadership styles. Do not go back into that first paper and copy it and drop it into this paper. Folks, that's self-plagiarism. And while there is a caveat that there are times that you can reuse your prior work, for example, if we were doing a progressive paper, that would be acceptable. This is not a progressive paper. You need to rewrite or summarize those key ideas and place them in this paper. Okay? Self-plagiarism is a violation of the honor code, and it is not the requirement for this course is that all of your work is original, that you're continuing to think and synthesize new information. So I'm going to warn you to be very careful with that and to avoid that misstep. The last thing I want to remind you is that I have extended your deadline for your due date paperwork. This is week 8. The typical deadline is a Friday at 11:59. Liberty graduation activities are going to have me very distracted this weekend. I'm not going to look at any of your work until next Monday, so there's no reason to have it sitting in Blackboard when you could use the last 2 days over the weekend, if your world works that way, to properly clean up any work and put together your final thoughts. So know that your work is, from my standpoint, is not due until Sunday at 11:59. There will not be any other extensions, so please make sure you hit that deadline. If there's something I can do for you, if you have questions, touch base. You will not get a feedback video for week 8, because by then you guys have already waved goodbye and are on your way out the door. So that's not purposeful activity for me. But know that if you will get feedback in your paper, but there just won't be a summary video like this. But know that if there's anything I can do for you as you move through your educational journey, as you move into the next courses, know that I'm here and that I'm cheering for you and I'm praying for your success. And if there's anything I can do, don't hesitate to touch base. I hope you guys are well and enjoying your week, and I will look forward to reviewing your final work next week. Y'all take care.